Welcome, welcome, welcome to this week's edition of Brother Nature. You are actually looking live over the Straits of Mackinac up in St. Ignace. That is the Wawatam Lighthouse. You can see there's still snow falling over there. Not necessarily down here, but that doesn't mean it's any less cold. The wind is whipped up. Aren't we lucky? I'm your host, Jack Nissen. I'm so happy to have everyone watching aboard. We have such a great episode this week. This time, we're actually exploring a really cool piece of property just down south in southern Wayne County. Take a look. It's a very Michigan day down here in Brownstown Township. We are pretty close to Telegraph, but actually, down here in southern Wayne County, we're standing in something much more interesting than any piece of pavement. This is the Sibley Prairie, and there are efforts to conserve it.
Well, my name is Jack Smiley. I'm president of the Michigan Land Conservancy, and we serve as an intermediary to buy land for governments or conservancies. And we're hoping to buy this property. We have an option that goes through this year, and we need to raise $6 billion. So we have a big challenge ahead of us. Well, it's a mosaic of habitats. So you have the oak openings, you have some Lake Plain Prairie, you've got some forested wetlands. It's really the diversity of habitats that really make this special.
Cadillac, when he first came here, he talked about luxuriant prairie grasses that fed the huge herds of magnificent American bison. People don't realize the last American bison was killed somewhere near here.
Is that
Like
right?
in the late 1800s.
I didn't think Manifest Destiny was happening so close to home. That's crazy.
Yes.
It really also adds to sort of, you're kind of walking back in time while you're walking just through this prairie.
Exactly.
So let's start at the beginning. I know that the beginning in geology goes back way, way long ago.
This is Lake Plain Prairie.
Lake Plain Prairie, okay.
So what that is as the glaciers receded, they created lakes as the water shed off, and basically the glacier we're speaking about is one that created, say, Lake Erie. All the fines and silts that percolated down from the lake and created the lake bed. It receded and it left this. It's very flat, but it's also comprised of a lot of fine particles that are completely impermeable or predominantly impermeable to water. So what does that mean? That means in the springtime when there's a lot of water, this gets saturated. Okay? Now.
So it floods then? This would
Basically,
would this
yeah,
be standing
that's the right
water
term.
that we're in right now?
It could be, yeah, absolutely. So now we have a unique plant community because it has to tolerate both flooding in the springtime and extreme drought in the summer. So the water evaporates, and then those conditions create higher diversity, okay, in terms of the plant community and associated communities, insect, bird communities, etc. It's only occurred in certain areas, and one of the areas is along Lake Erie, extending from southeast Michigan into northwest Ohio.
Okay, all right.
And it's this corridor that's considered globally unique because there's only plant species that occur here. Okay, and that is another reason why we really need to preserve this. This is the last piece of significant intact Lake Plain Prairie.
Reclaiming and restoring this place is going to take a lot of work. One reason why is this giant stalk right here. This is called Phragmites.
It inundates fragile ecosystems such as this one and displaces the native plants. We don't want that. Here's the offender right here, okay? I am going to, with prejudice, rip this out, okay? We're going to get rid of this stuff. This is Phragmites.
Show the camera too.
Okay?
This right here.
Phragmites.
This is the devil.
Bad, okay?
This is, of course, a larger effort with a lot of bodies behind it, but of course there's always sort of a need for, more interest from more of the public. Jack, tell me a little bit about the significance and the urgency of that.
Well, the clock is ticking. We only have a year to raise $6 million, and we really need some individual or group to come forward and create a true lasting legacy. This would be such a wonderful gift to the community and to gift the future generations. We're hoping someone's out there. Please contact us. We can be reached at savesibleyprairie.org.
Interestingly enough, and you won't be able to see it from our vantage, but there's actually Phragmites right behind us. It is not it's not an easy thing to get rid of, and I'm guessing that our the supporters of this effort are actually going to discover that as well. I have the founder with us here, the leader, Jack Smiley. Come over here.
Hi, Jack.
How you doing, sir?
Pretty good.
I appreciate how you being here on our very, very cold and windy day. Here, come a little bit closer, just so we're all in the vantage. A fun little anecdote. When we got back from shooting at Sibley Prairie, I got a call from a woman who saw the Fox 2 van leaving the prairie and asking, "What's going on?" And I told her what we were doing, and she said, "I've been trying to win the lottery so I could actually help with this effort."
Well, I wish you could.
And I have to imagine, you know, if it's not one lottery winner, it's going to be a collection of groups sort of helping out. Can you tell us a little bit about where you got the idea for this?
Well, we've been concerned about the Sibley Prairie for years. We've known it was one of the greatest assets that Michigan has. And when it went up for auction in August, we were very concerned. So we scrambled to get the financing to secure an option to buy. And luckily we did. So they pulled it from the auction and gave us 1 year to raise the money. So we have until next December to raise $6 million. So I really thank you for doing this program, because we need more people to know about Sibley Prairie, and hopefully somebody out there will be willing to step forward and really help us on this. We actually need a visionary donor willing to create a living legacy that will last for generations.
So the rarity of this thing is so interesting because there's nothing really like it in Southeast Michigan, or maybe even sounds like the whole Great Lakes.
Well, it's the rarest, and it's the highest quality Lake Plain prairie remaining in the entire state of Michigan. And so that's really remarkable. And there's so many rare and endangered species there. It would just be a crime to allow this to be developed.
Sure. So if you can rewind for me, tell me who owns the property right now, and has it always been a private property?
Well, it's always been private, and it's been owned by Fritz Enterprises for the last 40 or so years. And they've been good stewards of it, but they want to sell it now. And so the DNRs tried to buy it for many years, but previously they were never interested in selling. So now they are, and we have a binding option, so we just need to secure the funding and we can make this happen.
And tell me, I mean, is this a personal connection to you? What is it about, why is it so important to you?
Well, I've always been concerned about preserving land for future generations. I grew up in Nankin Township, became the city of Westland, and I used to say I grew up in the country, but I later lived in the city. The only problem is I didn't move, the city did. And so
Yes.
over all these years, especially in Wayne County, we've had all this urban sprawl destroying the countryside and destroying the cities. So they go hand in hand. Land conservation and urban revitalization go hand in hand. And we need to get that message to our state legislators, because they really haven't seemed to grasp the issue. And if we could stop urban sprawl, we could really speed the redevelopment of Detroit and the inner communities where development is needed. We've developed far too much land already.
I think it's so interesting is I don't know how many people are aware that such a historic piece of paradise, and I know for people who are watching the package before, it didn't necessarily look like paradise, but the photos you're seeing now actually are what looks so cool. I mean, it is in bloom with flowers and insects and trees and everything in between, which I think is just so special to have right in our backyard.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so close. It's just a short from downtown Detroit even.
Yeah.
So everybody in Southeast Michigan could really enjoy this. I'm sure people from around the state will come, because we've had donations from all over the state and from other states as well, because they're very concerned about prairie habitats.
Okay. Well, Jack, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much.
The link is it savesibleyprairie.org?
SaveSibleyPrairie.org.
Okay.
We'd love to hear from you.
Coming up after the break, we're going to speak to someone with the Sierra Club, who also is somewhat intertwined with this process, as well as sort of, generally getting an idea about how important it is to, have a relationship with our land. Coming up after the break. We'll see you then. So the efforts to actually save the Sibley Prairie is not just one group. It's a coalition of groups. And here with me right now is Ken Jacobson. You are with the Sierra Club. I understand that correct?
Yes, I'm a volunteer with the local Sierra Club, and we're a member of, there's 11 members currently of the coalition.
Okay.
So we're one of those 11 members. And I personally am the chairman for the Wildlands and Wildlife Committee for Sierra Club, and I'm also in charge of their local outings program, taking people out for hikes and canoeing, things like that.
So, I mean, that has to mesh in pretty well with the Sierra Club's general goal, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. One of our major goals is to try and increase the access to nature for people. And in a place like Wayne County, that can be challenging. Wayne County only has about 6% that is dedicated to parklands. Similar areas, like the city of Detroit, similar areas to Detroit, they have about 19% on average.
That's
so
not a lot at all.
No, we're way below our average of other peer cities.
Yeah, and I know Jack Smiley even mentioning that the urban sprawl out of southeast Michigan is just sort of, spread so unmitigatedly, and I understand the pressures behind all that, but lost in the process is all that green space that I know we really truly interact and get a whole lot out of, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges in Wayne County and basically in our Tri-County area, so Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb, is that there's not a lot of public green space that's kind of left available for expanding parks. So two things that we're doing at Sierra Club is we're trying to draw a line and say important areas like Sibley Prairie we want to see preserved. Okay, when you look at like a Google map of Wayne County, you see this huge green spot that's kind of on the edge of the urban development.
Totally.
And that is the prairie that we're trying to save right now, which is actually not just a prairie, it's a mix of wetlands, woodlands, and prairie. And we're trying to find those areas and make sure that preserved. And then the other thing we're trying to do is actually kind of rewild some of the areas that we've already developed. Maybe they're a golf course today, but it's not needed anymore. So we'll establish areas like that to try and rewild them. One of our coalition members.
I want to know, what is rewilding? Because I love this term. I heard it a long time ago, but now it's back in the news.
Yeah, rewilding is basically introducing plants and animals and habitats into areas maybe that have been disrupted to reintroduce, like wolves in Colorado. That would be an example, a big example. There's wolves that are being introduced over in Europe and stuff, and they're actually finding that having predators and adding them back into those habitats is actually helping rewild those areas quicker.
Yeah.
And then we're also, there are things like I said, a golf course that could be purchased and maybe moved back into like prairie habitat and things like that.
Would the motivation then to be trying to restore it to its original habitat, or is there, when you say that line that you're trying to draw, I don't know if there's an element of coexistence you're looking for?
There's definitely, I mean, there are a lot of benefits to living close to nature. So with children, it helps with their cognitive abilities.
Sure, totally.
With older people, it helps with our stress.
Totally.
Being in the outdoors has a lot of benefits. There have been studies that show for every $1 spent on parkland preservation and improvements, there's $3 of benefits from a healthcare perspective, $3 of savings.
Which, I mean, I know this all it might be hard and difficult to actually measure that sort of improvement when you're directly interacting with it, but at the same time, you can probably sort of read the same metrics over a much longer period of time and eventually sort of see the response. There's a huge public health element to it.
There is, and actually, it's not that hard to measure. See, like when I get ornery, my wife is like, Ken, go outside and go look at some birds,
Yes,
so, I
yes.
mean, there are definite immediate benefits to getting outdoors.
So, the Sibley Prairie is kind of the big one we're talking about. Are there other things like that you guys are also trying to work with?
At Sierra Club, there's kind of two big wildland projects we're working on. There's things like acquiring lands like Sibley Prairie, but also we're trying to preserve lands. There's a number of lands that are actually already owned by cities and counties and schools, like colleges, and they actually have developers that want to come in and build things on those lands, whether it's data centers or public housing. We're trying to kind of draw a line saying we need to preserve those natural lands that exist, and we need to make sure the ones that we already have in public hands are not converted to other use.
Yeah, I see land use as being a really, really tricky issue because of just the number of people and groups involved that I can see how complicated it gets, and as well as the number of people involved. I'm sure there's a lot of different opinions about how you actually use that land.
Yeah, I mean, affordability is the big thing that people are talking about right now. So there's concerns about data centers driving up the cost of electricity. You know, we have problems with housing. There's stuff in the news right now that we're talking about Wall Street buying up our housing,
Sure,
right? Making
totally.
it harder for people to afford houses. So it's like we definitely need affordable housing, but it's a question of where's the appropriate place to do. And we should be repurposing brownfields and commercial areas before we're actually developing our natural areas.
Absolutely. Ken doesn't know it, but I was going to tell him, happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, what a great way to actually spend it out in the freezing, windy days.
I wouldn't have it any other way, Jack.
Absolutely, absolutely. Coming up after the break, we're going to be taking a look at a whole wide range of stuff that happened over the new year as well as this past week. I can't wait to show all of it to you guys. Again, it's savesibleyprairie.org. We'll have a link on our website for anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more about that. We'll see you right after the break.
Thank you.
As windy as it is outside right now, I can tell you that it's actually usually when my next guest, well, he's a recorded guest, is out in the field, it's a whole lot worse. So you might have seen some of these actual clips pop up on your social feed. This is Nate Vojtovic. He is the leader of Nate's Dronography, and boy, oh boy, does he have a cool job. And I got to talk to him. Take a look.
I've lived in St. Joe, Stevensville area, which is just the next town south. That's where I grew up. Moved to St. Joe for a few years. Now I actually moved up here to Walker, Michigan, which is by Grand Rapids. Kind of living in two places temporarily. St. Joe's been my home. It'll always be my home, no matter where I end up full time. Like if I end up at Grand Rapids, I'm still gonna go to St. Joe. I'm still gonna go get those waves. I just gotta drive a little bit more.
Tell me a little bit about the evolution of it. How long were you, photographing stuff, and then when did drones come into play?
So I saved up my money. I was like working like Dairy Queen or something. I don't remember. And saved up all my money, put a drone up. I took a photo of downtown St. Joe just during the fall, and my friends, like my friends on my personal profile, really liked it. So I'm like, well, why don't I start a drone page, So I'm like, let's make something goofy. I won't, I'll never be big one day. I'm just gonna do Nate's Dronography, right? And that's where it all started. I mean, it's beautiful. The beaches of West Michigan are just gorgeous, and you got all these landmarks, these lighthouses, and they're not only made for navigation. I mean, that's what they're made for, but they make just awesome ice sculptures. I mean, it's cool. It's cool to see like these waves that are like freaking 20 feet high come over and nail these lighthouses, and I don't know. I think it's amazing. It never gets old.
The landmarks over there, I agree. They're so iconic. They're so West Michigan, and honestly, Great Lakes as well. I think that mixed with the conditions that you see and all the content you come up with, it looks like it's from another world sometimes. The first time I ever saw one of yours was those little sand hoodoos, I think.
Yes. The little sand sculptures. Those are by far the most fascinating. And every time you get a wind event and then you get ice, every time is different. And then it melts like it's 50 degrees here today. So it's all gone. But then we're going to get some strong winds come Sunday with more cold air. And we're going to have more sand sculptures that are different shapes. It's really cool. And it's hard to imagine because like sand is so fine and it's but then you see the wind just carves them, especially like up the dunes and stuff. The wind just carves them, and then you got moisture coming off the lake, so it's constantly a moist environment, and then you just get the cold air and they just freeze in place.
Is there any other I guess things you photographed that really stand out to you in the years that you've done this?
I captured a snowy owl a few years ago. Those are actually very, very rare and very hard to see. I've only seen one since I've ever been out there. You'd have to dive back on my page a couple years and see it. It was absolutely beautiful. I came up over and they're big. They're kind of big birds. And came up over. I was just trekking the dune. Winds blowing, snow's blowing. I can't see very much. And then there's this massive owl, just like, and they're pretty big birds. And I'm like, holy crap, that's a snowy owl.
How do you prepare for one of these things? What kind of details are you looking for?
You just learn the basics of weather, like big low pressure system, like that's going to swing through this weekend. Right on that back side, we're going to have 12, 15 plus foot waves again come Sunday. I'm usually on top of the dunes, getting the full brunt of whatever Mother Nature's throwing at us that day. The blowing sand is the biggest thing. I highly recommend getting a pair of ski goggles. That was the best thing I bought. Well, actually, my fiance bought it for me because I kept getting sand under my contacts. Because I mean, you're getting wind blasted though. It's not just snow you're dealing with, or sometimes it's the sand. That sand hurts at 50, 60 miles an hour.
One more piece of advice from Nate is to respect the lake, because when the lake is kicking up waves like that get that big and that cold, it's going to sweep you into the water if you're not prepared, especially if you're caught out in the open. He even had some video posted this week of people that were wandering out toward that lighthouse, trying to get some good images, but at the same time, water is barely sweeping through near them, so it get kind of scary. All right, so what else happened this week? Mostly, there was a giant report that came out from the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. This was the year in review of the Great Lakes. How are the Great Lakes doing? It's kind of a wash, I would say. First, we have good news from the piping plover. That's over at Sleeping Bear Dunes. This little shorebird is he's endangered. They're about 7 inches big. They live to be about 5 to 6 years, and they will breed with the same mate during their migrations back to Michigan. This used to be a bird you find all over the Great Lakes. They really prefer the dunes, though. That's specifically where they like to nest. Unfortunately, habitat destruction made it a little bit tough on them to survive, which is why back in 1990, they were down to 12 pairs. There used to be up to 500 pairs. Since then, though, these numbers have actually rebounded. They're up to 88. That's the good news. However, not everything is so great. If you look at the sea lamprey, in 2021, funding was essentially on pause because of COVID. That meant there was less management for these parasitic eels. These things like to latch onto fish, and they pretty much decimated the lake trout population back in the 1950s, I believe, is kind of when it hit its worst sort of stage. With this pause in management, you actually saw an increase in these in lamprey actually returning. That means that, and actually what it led to was a $90 million hit to the economy, specifically in Lake Ontario where these guys first sort of come through. That's a problem because you need to keep managing these things, otherwise you're going to get into trouble. And now for the lake whitefish. This population is a beloved species in Michigan. It's also on the verge of collapse. You can thank the quagga mussel for that. These guys actually managed to deal with a lot of invasive species no matter what kind of arrival they actually had coming to the Great Lakes. But quagga mussels are tricky because they basically siphon the algae out of the water. That's what feeds zooplankton. And that's what the young lake whitefish actually feed on. You take away the food from these things, the young ones are not going to be able to survive. That's really, really tricky. All right, that is everything from Brother Nature this week. I'm so happy to have you join us. And next week, we'll be looking at a whole lot more. Fox 2 Detroit Live is coming up next.